The golden sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the African savanna. The warm breeze rustled through the dry grass, carrying the distant calls of wild animals. Birds soared overhead, their wings cutting through the crisp evening air. Everything seemed peaceful, but hidden beneath the beauty of the landscape was a desperate struggle for survival. A small black lion cub, barely old enough to fend for himself, crouched low behind a bush. His heart pounded in his tiny chest as he peered out with wide, frightened eyes. His mother lay just a short distance away, her powerful body weakened and trembling. Her sleek black fur, once strong and beautiful, was now matted and dull, covered in something horrifying, millions of tiny parasites swarming her body, draining her strength with every passing moment. The cub let out a soft whimper, torn between fear and helplessness. His mother had always been the strongest creature he knew, the one who protected him from the dangers of the wild. But now, she could barely lift her head. Her once mighty roar had faded into weak, painful groans. The cub nudged her gently, trying to wake her, but she barely responded. A wave of panic surged through him. He didn't know what was happening to her, but he knew one thing for certain. He had to find help. But where? The cub had never wandered far from his mother before. She had always been the one leading the way, teaching him to hunt, to hide, to survive. Now, he was alone in the vast, dangerous wilderness. His small body was no match for the predators lurking in the shadows. Hyenas, leopards, even other lions who wouldn't hesitate to attack a lone cub. Yet he had no choice. If he stayed, his mother would die. A gust of wind ruffled his fur, and he forced himself to take a shaky step forward, then another, and another. His legs trembled, but his determination burned stronger than his fear. He had to find someone, anyone, who could save her. The cub moved cautiously through the tall grass, ears pricked for any sound. The world suddenly felt so much bigger, more dangerous. Every rustling leaf sent his heart racing. Shadows stretched and moved, making his imagination run wild. But he kept going, guided by a single thought. He couldn't lose her. Then, in the distance, he heard something. Voices. His ears twitched, and he lifted his head, straining to hear. It was unlike any sound he had ever known, not the deep growls of lions or the cackling laughter of hyenas. These voices were different, softer, more controlled, and they were close. The cub hesitated for just a moment, then took off toward the sound, paws kicking up dust as he ran. His tiny heart pounded, harder with every step. He didn't know what he would find, but he had to take the chance, because time was running out. The mother lion lay motionless, her breath coming in slow, labored pants. The parasites that had taken over her body crawled in thick, writhing masses over her fur. They had buried themselves into her skin, sucking away her strength, weakening her beyond what she could fight off alone. Her once golden eyes were half-lidded, her ears twitching faintly as she tried to stay aware of her surroundings. She knew her cub had gone, but she had been too weak to stop him, too weak to follow. But deep inside, she still held on. She had to. Then, distant sounds reached her ears, rustling grass, hurried footsteps. The scent of humans filled the air, her body tensed, a flicker of old instinct urging her to move, to run, to protect her cub. But she couldn't. Her strength had left her. The figures emerged from the brush, stopping just a few feet away. The cub rushed forward, nuzzling against her, face whimpering softly. She tried to lift her head, but it felt impossibly heavy. The woman knelt beside her, eyes scanning over the lioness's frail body. A sharp breath escaped her lips. "Oh my God!" Another team member stepped closer. "That's worse than I expected," he said grimly. "The parasites, they're everywhere." The woman reached into her bag, pulling out a radio. "We need an emergency transport now. She doesn't have much time." The cub looked up at them with wide, desperate eyes, as if asking, "Will she be okay?" The woman met his gaze, her face softening for just a second. We'll do everything we can. The team sprang into action. Nets and ropes were carefully positioned, not to trap, but to help. A tranquilizer dart was prepared, just enough to keep the lioness calm but not harm her fragile body. The cub paced anxiously as they worked, his little heart thudding with uncertainty. Minutes felt like hours. The sun had dipped lower, casting an orange glow over the land. Then, success. The lioness was secured, gently lifted onto a stretcher. The cub followed closely, unwilling to be separated from her. The humans moved quickly, carrying her toward their vehicle. The woman turned to the cub and gave a small nod. "Come on, little one." With one last glance at his mother, the cub scrambled after them, his small paws pressing into the dirt. He had done it. He had found help. But the battle wasn't over yet because now they had to save her life.